Released in November of 2014 by Ubisoft Sofia, Assassin's Creed Rogue flew under the radar for most. As far as I can tell, reason for that is it was given to the public on the same day a significantly more talked about game in the series, Assassin's Creed Unity, was released. Unity had the shiny new Anvil Next 2.0 engine, which had been used all the way up until Valhalla. For many who could only get one game, Rogue was stuck in the past using the Anvil Next engine, giving it that dated but very nostalgic visuals if you were into the Assassin's Creed scene at the time. There's been less talk about it than some of the other games in the series, and with its 10th anniversary having just passed us, I'm hoping that history repeats itself once more, and the pillars of the video essay community turn their scripts and OBS drives to the shinier, admittedly more buggier, twin brother. And while I have kept my hands clean of such cliché titling choices until now, I can think of no better time to sell out my soul than to ask, was Assassin's Creed Rogue secretly an underappreciated masterpiece, or just an underplayed game? Tainting my soul a little bit with that title, let's hop into the Animus once more and find out. Following an eagle, we hear our protagonist Shay's voice.
Stay my blade from the flesh of the innocent. Hide in plain sight. Never compromise the Assassin Brotherhood. These are the tenets of the Creed, the principles I used to live by. I was a young man then. The 7 Years' War was about to begin. I could not have imagined what the future had in store for me, nor the cost I would choose to bear. My name is Shay Patrick Cormac. This is my story.
As we shift into our first mission, kill the assassin. As we move across the trees, we get our first taste of the movement, parkour. It's what you've come to expect from the Next Engine and the Kenway saga, for better and worse. Jumping down, we trigger an air assassination, only for the assassin to dodge out of the way. All of this foreshadowing what we must do later. A direct, a misdirect, a fake out, double fake out, call it what you will. But these two share a laugh and exchange a bit of banter, and we hear for the first time a line that will be repeated quite frequently.
I make my own luck, Liam.
Hearing a gun of some sort echo through the frigid air, we scramble off to find its source. Its source, in this case, is one of our allies, a Frenchman by the name of Captain Joseph.
Tis Capitaine Louis-Joseph Gauthier, Chevalier de la Vérendrye.
That. Here, we see the confrontational relationship between Shay and the other assassins being shown, as neither of these two really respect each other. In fact, I think it's safe to say they downright hate each other. This conversation quickly escalates to blows, giving us a tutorial on how to counter, riposte, and counter again. With our fists this time, the same thing applies when using a blade. Quickly, right before we're about to knock Captain...
Tis Capitaine Louis-Joseph Gauthier, Chevalier de la Vérendrye.
Thank you. Captain Joseph's teeth out, Liam steps in, as we've got bigger fish to fry. Namely, the British who have commandeered our fine captain's ship and snatched the smugglers we were supposed to meet with. Being handed our cutlass and parrying dagger, we slip off and find the camp they've been held at, making short work of them while remaining unseen. Freeing them and slipping onto the ship moored off the shore, we free the men on the deck, taking care of the redcoats as we do. And as we free the last bunch, a few more surge out from below, muskets raised. Here, we get to see just how competent Shay is in a cutscene fight, laying a few down quickly, before Liam and Captain Joseph...
Capitaine Louis-Joseph Gauthier, Chevalier de la Vérendrye.
Thank you. Make a quick entrance, finishing off the rest. Claiming the ship as our own, much to the confusion of Captain Joseph...
Capitaine Louis-Joseph Gauthier, Chevalier de la Vérendrye.
We'll be sticking with Captain Joseph for now. Thank you. The controls of the Morgan are about as same as what you expect. In fact, they're exactly the same as Black Flag. And even more so, a good deal of this game is just the same as Black Flag. Same engine, same graphics, same general combat, and in fact, the same modern-day office with our cubicle just being one room over. But we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. Something else that's exactly the same, with a few variations, are the base weapons of the Morgan. Save for the chase guns, which are now explosive shot, meant to deal with icebergs, as opposed to the chain we had in the Indies for masts. And we have oil barrels instead of explosions. After freeing Joseph from the pain of having to exist within eyesight of Shay, we hear the first of a classic shanty, Randy Dandio, as we set course heading back to our mentor and getting a glitched out title screen as we pan out.
What course would you have me set, Shay?
Time to report back to the mentor. Wouldn't you agree?
Wise words, Captain. Wise words.
The hell did you do? It's some kind of dormant virus? Shit. Hang on, I'm getting you out of there.
Here we start getting yelled at by one Violet de Costa, someone who we will later learn is a true Blue Templar and one of the top agents within. Getting loaned out by our current boss, Miss LeMay, we go to reset the area servers after being told not to delete the data we were working through by someone higher on the totem pole.
Your job is to prevent things like this.
We need to contain these genetic memories, then we can destroy them.
No. Isolate them. I want to study these memories.
But
With respect, Miss LeMay, this is not a request.
You heard the man.
fine.
I need to borrow your numbskull. That okay with you, Ms. LeMay?
Hey there, this might seem a bit weird, but you're gonna work for contractors we hired to, upgrade our security. Mr. Otto Berg and Miss Violet DaCosta.
Call me Violet.
I have to go check on our people and prepare a statement for the press. Do whatever they tell you to do, okay? Go team!
Following, we get a quick minigame in which you redirect beams of light in order to illuminate the core of a puzzle with different colors doing a variety of different things to the beams, which, while not overtly difficult, can be a fun brain tickler of which I enjoyed looking throughout the office space and then through the whole building, though do take this with a grain of salt, as I did enjoy the Bioshock pipe puzzle. After being told about data pads for collection and a few more puzzles to look for to unlock more background and lore in the world, along with, once completed, more unlockable items in the game. Considering this is our first interaction with the modern-day story, let's look it over right now so it won't interrupt us again.
Do you understand now?
I'm starting to see why you're so interested in Shay Cormac.
Every once in a while, we get pulled out of the Animus to go clear out some more server space, as well as to find out more about the man higher on the totem pole, Osto Berg. Johanni Osto Berg was a member of the Utajagia regiment, or the Finnish Special Forces, before eventually being forced to join the Templars through blackmail, where he eventually found a home leading Sigma team against the Assassin Brotherhood, before getting injured and put on office duty for a time. Throughout the story, we get a few more instances of being pulled out to go fix a server, most of which go about exactly the same. Get up, hear a little background from our colleagues, do the puzzle, learn a bit about Berg and why he joined up with his philosophy being shown. Then we head back into the Animus and continue our journey before doing it all over again. However, one part I do enjoy about the modern day story is the implied choice our character makes at the end to join with the Templars after seeing, admittedly, the worst brotherhood they could have ever seen, with all parties involved absolutely breaking more than a few tenets of the creed. In fact, seeing that would make damn near anyone decide the Templars were a better option. This does make me wish, however, that we touch on this character again a bit later, just due to the potential story of it to go somewhere, having someone willingly join up with the Templars in the modern day, just as far as I'm aware, our character from Black Flag decided to join the Assassins, given the events that he saw. But I do doubt that the opportunity will be touched on unless Shadows has some massive twist that they have managed to keep hidden. With the modern day about as same as it is in Black Flag, this leads to even more comparisons, but once more, we'll burn that when we get to it. Overall, I would say the modern day is pretty fun if you like the pipe puzzle from Bioshock 1, and learning about the world from audio logs hidden throughout the building is something I enjoy. With the modern day story touched on, let's head back into the Animus and to the North Atlantic to continue the story of Shay Patrick Cormac. Arriving back at the Davenport homestead, it's unsurprisingly the same as it was when we left it at the end of Assassin's Creed 3. Here, we have a meeting between Achilles and a fan-favorite character, Adewale, coming up from the West Indies, being told to head over and do some more training with the other assassins. We go and do that, but not before eavesdropping on their conversation and learning about the cause of the 1751 earthquake that shook Port-au-Prince. This time, though we don't know it yet and won't for a little bit longer, it was caused by the removal of an Isu artifact within the precursor site, shown on an artifact currently in the possession of the New York chapter of the Templars.
Tell me what happened, old friend.
It was terrible, Achilles. The ground shook, and the ocean waves crashed over Port-au-Prince.
How many were lost?
Thousands. No family was left untouched.
I hate to bring up practical matters at a time like this, but did Macandal's man complete his task before the earthquake hit?
I cannot know. Vendredi has not been found. He was a strong Maroon, one of Macandal's best students.
Such a shame. So we cannot know if he found the site.
Indeed. But if there was a temple under the waves, I doubt it is still standing.
And the artifacts that showed the way?
Stolen. The Templars broke in during the chaos. They seized the manuscript and precursor box. I gave chase on the sea but lost their trail when they reached New York.
We must consider what to do next.
With that information learned and stowed away, we head over and start our training, getting to know our merry band of assassins.
You are late.
Oh, what did I miss?
First up, we have Hope Jensen, someone who Shay clearly fancies to a degree. Her skill set lies in pickpocketing and organizing large information networks, with her use of gangs in New York before the Templars end up putting them to the sword being a very viable and immediate source of her powers. Her training will reinforce our skills of unseen assassination in different forms throughout a training course. Liam O'Brien, Achilles' first apprentice and second in command, quickly rising through the ranks of the Brotherhood, Liam was childhood friends with Shay, and as such, they are quite close, with Liam even being the person to bring Shay into the Creed itself. As shown by his training segment with a pistol course, he is a crack shot with a flintlock, those being his preferred weapons, along with a large axe mentioned several times throughout the game and dialogue, though never shown outside of concept art. The third member of our little trio is Kasigawase, who was born in the Wolosayoke territory. His outfit is definitely more in line with his Abenaki heritage compared to the other uniforms of the assassins. A former mercenary for the French army, he got recruited due to his ability to gain allies in the surrounding tribes, helping spread the influence of the Creed, as well as his knowledge of the surrounding area. He teaches us both the hunting and crafting mechanics, which haven't changed any from the Kenway saga, even retaining hunting challenges, along with showing the player how to move swiftly throughout the trees and natural structures of the New World for free running. Outside of our merry little band, we have Captain Joseph, who is openly dismissive and antagonistic of Shay. All members beyond him seem to be a bit more neutral on him, respecting his skills immensely, but they hold a massive amount of disappointment in his constant shirking of training, seeing it as a waste of his potential. Something about cats and leashes. The major outlier is Liam, due to their shared history of growing up together, and his help lifting Shay out of the depression he had after the death of his father. Heading to Achilles once the training has finished, he gifts us with 2 pistols, tasking us with finding a manuscript and a translation device of sorts. Setting off, we start to follow the lead given to us by Captain Joseph. But first, we must outfit the Morgan with something better than the base guns and armor. On our way to get outfitted, we ask about our current horse in the race, the French. With Haiti being one of the largest users of slaves in the New World, as well as a French colony, it does seem rather hypocritical to be throwing our full support behind the French crown as of this time. But, like most points that Shay makes, it's brushed aside by our betters. We can start to dig into the ship controls and mobility a little bit more, given that we're sailing around now. As stated previously, it feels very smooth, with the controls being basically the same as in Black Flag. The only major changes to our weaponry is the use of a puckle gun instead of the swivel gun, burning oil to ward off chasing vessels, replacing the explosive barrels, an explosive shot in place of the chain, like what we found in the West Indies and the Jackdaw, with the final piece being an upgraded ram to break through the sheet ice and ice blocking some passageways. New additions within the combat system are when shooting icebergs, a very rare sight in the West Indies, a massive wave will ripple out from it breaking apart that can be used to wipe out gunboats and damage weaker vessels, adding another tool for our kit. To spice up combat a little bit more, we aren't the only ship that's able to board the others, with other ships, mainly brigs I believe, being able to ram us and start killing off our crew, though I have found they are a great way to gain health during long naval engagements, should you be outmatched and can bait them into striking you, making them more of an aid than a hindrance. Ship combat feels smooth, and while it could just be my nostalgia talking, I think the world looks very beautiful, with the snowy Atlantic being one of my favorites to poke around in and explore, occasionally there being massive swaths of the northern lights to see at night. The sea shanties have returned once more from Black Flag, yet again being caught by running about like a madman after a floating bit of paper. The shanties themselves are a wonderful mix of known and lesser known to keep yourself entertained with as you look for prey to gather supplies and upgrade the Morgan. Quick trip to a harbor master later, and the fortress of Anticosti, we sink a few schooners that were harassing the local fishermen as we end up talking to our spy, Le Chasseur. He has found the plans for a new type of gun.
Take a look at this. I borrowed these plans from a Royal Navy ship of the line. They are like nothing I have ever seen.
Good. We could use some more powerful weapons. Le Chasseur, allow me to present our associate, Shay Cormac.
As well as a new lead on the manuscript being held by a high-ranking Templar official named Lawrence Washington.
Language I did not recognize and was full of drawings, plants, and animals out of an opium dream.
Were there no charts, no maps?
No. There may have been some kind of code, but neither I nor the roast beefs could ken
Where's
it.
the manuscript now?
The man who brought it said a man named Washington sent him.
I know that name. He's an important Templar, isn't he?
He is. Lawrence Washington has great ambitions that Templars have helped fulfill. Shay, let's return and find him. You, sir, have our thanks.
Sailing into the river valley, we make our way through the tight green hills to a small town called Two Bends. Here we meet up with our merry band of assassins. Getting a rundown of the Templars' current movements, spies and diplomats are attempting to use every contact they can to find out what the manuscript says, with it currently being illegible. And as a result, with such a wide net cast, we were able to pick up on a few strands. Sailing off on the Morrigan, we find the ship carrying the items we need, and tailing it, this gives us a little time to get into the background of what Lawrence has been doing, being the most likely suspect for the person who nicked the artifact, given his proximity to Haiti at the time of the earthquake. Talking with Liam while we get our first tailing mission on a boat this time, so while we follow it, it gives us a little time to discuss the two quartermasters we will have in our employ on the Morrigan, Liam O'Brien and Christopher Gist. Given they are filling the shoes left by a fan-favorite character, Adewale, it is no surprise that they have a little left to be desired. And given that, let's take a look at them through that lens. Purely through a superficial level, their voices aren't nearly distinct enough to separate them from the rest of the crew. Within Black Flag, Adewale had a fairly unique voice, and with it was a voice of reason. He had half-decent morals and restraint, all something that Edward lacked. His Jiminy Cricket, if you will, with him trying to help and push Edward in the right direction, and as a result, actively coming into conflict with Edward throughout the game. All of these led him to be a fondly remembered character, with clear personality traits you can point to in casual conversation. With Liam, there's a clear difference on how he acts around the other members of the Brotherhood, and then how he acts around Shay. You can clearly tell that they are close friends, loosening up around each other, with Shay being the wild one of the duo, getting reined in by the more calm and patient Liam, while at the same time, Shay draws out a bit more of the carefree side that his friend has, and letting his hair down, so to speak. As a character, due to being patient, and as he seems to be significantly more reactive, much like the Brotherhood when it comes to interacting and interfering with the Templar business, he holds the Brotherhood above all else, even his comrades, which is little shock given how his actions will change in the future. While on paper, this character works well, though in execution, it does seem to fall a little bit flat, resulting in a mostly forgettable first mate that doesn't leave a lasting impression for the 2.5 odd hours he serves as our quartermaster. And looking at the concept art found on the wiki, the design definitely seems to stand out more there, giving him facial hair, the axe talked about occasionally in scenes, and a more vibrant red sash as an accent to stand out a bit more, but those seem to be lost in the color grading of the game. Which, while in much other instances I would prefer, with the color grading kept consistent, as it gives the Assassin's Creed games of this era a more unique look that leaves him to just sort of blending in as a nondescript member of our crew. Starting off stronger than Liam, we have our first interaction with Christopher Gist. It's a rescue mission. He is being hung by the neck until dead for his crimes, and we need to save him, giving us a reason to care, if nothing else, but because he's a mission objective with a timer attached. We'll touch on the details of that mission later on, but in contrast with Liam's more subdued nature, Gist is loud. He enjoys his drink along with some fine company, and based off of some dialogue you can have with him, it is very fine company indeed. Given the reactions by Haytham and Shay during some missions, he clearly regales us tales of his conquests of the upper crust of society fairly regularly, to the point that both of them are able to quickly shut him down without a word spoken. Interestingly enough, he is not a completely original character for the game, but one of the first explorers into the Ohio River Valley, even reportedly saving the life of George Washington on more than one occasion during his time in the military, standing alongside him for a good deal of the French-Indian War. Overall, he's friendly to Shay, even pushing for the Templars to accept him into the Order a good deal earlier than some of the others would have, even with him knowing about Shay's former allegiance. So while he is better than Liam, having significantly more time to shine, I would say he is just serviceable enough, but in the end, doesn't leave a long-lasting impression, even with a relatively substantial Wikipedia page on him. Having tailed the ship to reach the point we need, we find that the Morgan can't get around the final bends undetected. Jumping ashore as Liam brings her around, we find ourselves at Mount Vernon and the Washington estate. Slipping onto the ship via the water, we find the crate that we need and open it. It's a rifle of sorts, and as a guard rushes us, we have a split-second decision to make as Shay pulls the trigger. We now have an air rifle, silent, sometimes deadly, but more often than not utilitarian. It can be used to distract, put to sleep, blow up objects, or send its victims into a blind rage, killing all those around before dropping dead themselves. Just over the ridge, we find a party in full swing. Fireworks, an unhealthy amount of booze, music, the works. Between all this ruckus, isn't it too hard to slip into the party unnoticed?
Brother, are you sure you shouldn't be in bed?
I am fine, George. Be a good host for my sake. Go to the wine cellar and get something special for our guests.
I will. Gentlemen?
Overhearing the conversation, we find a certain 6'2" red-headed giant who will appear in a few more games throughout the series, George Washington, younger brother of Lawrence Washington, our current target. Lawrence sends his brother to get some wine, which clearly is an attempt to get him away so he can give some final orders to his fellow Templars. Orders are as follows: figure out what the hell is going on with the artifact, and leave his brother out of Templar affairs. Throughout this whole conversation, it is abundantly clear he is dying, which gives Shay some pause, and even a hint of questioning about his place in things, on whether or not he should follow through on the execution of an already dying man, who, by his own admission, without intervention would most likely be dead before the month is out. But he is a Templar, and such doubts will have to be dealt with at a later point. Business is business. Trailing him, we pause in the petunias before leaping out and ramming our hidden blade into his gut.
Too late, assassin.
It's never too late to ruin Templar plans, Master Washington.
But my plans are already in motion. Even leading you here has given my allies time to escape. Thank you for making my end a quick one.
And thank you for revealing your master plan, you scheming snake.
With our newest revelation, we give little reverence for him, and we have a new goal. Get to the Morgan without it or us being blown to oblivion with a small army of mortars placed on the nearby ships, doing some rather unsporting actions. Leaping on board, we quickly managed to slip out of their sight, and talking with Liam, futile as it may be, on if we did the right thing on killing Lawrence given his condition. As always, Liam seems purely focused on the assassin's reactionary tactics, with his main focus being on screwing the Templars in whatever way he can. These questions can wait, though, as we end segment 1, which I would consider to be the introductory segment if this was one of my intro serials, as we are given a time skip, a few months, to May of 1754.
The memory appears to be fragmented. How much time has passed?
A few months, I think. That virus is cutting off our access to complete memories. The readable, but messy.
The 7 Years' War will soon break out in the colonies. Focus on assassin interference.
We'll do our best. Won't we, numbskull?
So grim about the homestead now that Miss Abigail and little Connor...
The virus is still running havoc on the system, but it's mostly clear what's happening these past few months. Continuing our attempts, we try to find the artifact. The major shakeup here is the death of Achilles' family, with all other motions dying alongside them, other than rage. Whatever this box holds, it is clearly the obsession of his mind, and the only thing in it at this point. Well, in the modern day, our handlers talk about the 7 Years' War starting to raise tensions. At least here on this small coast, they clearly already are in a full boiling point around us, given the French and British vessels are exchanging fire as we pass, making the audio a bit harder to parse through here. Discussing what all this artifact does, it seems to be a translator of sorts, akin to the magic lantern of the same time frame. Instead of turning the script of a picture into a projection on the wall, it turns the script into a reader that the language can understand, though through what means is currently unknown. Here we move on to far more important matters that we will continue discussing with Gist when he becomes our quartermaster in some time. What country has the hottest dames, with Lisbon being thrown into the ring as a contender? Interestingly enough, something that didn't quite click for me the first few times playing the game is that line, which can be hand-waven and ignored, is partially as to why Shay is aware of the location within Lisbon that the seismic temple is, particularly it being the Covenant, and as such, he is able to quickly find where he needs to go when retrieving the artifact. Moving onwards, we head into port to meet one of our contacts, Le Chasseur and Captain Joseph. Our newest target is Samuel Smith. He is nearby and going to be the test subject of the Puckle gun, recently cast and equipped on our ship. Joseph accompanies us as we put the Puckle gun on and use it quite effectively. It's decent enough at its job, being able to quickly lock onto targets with a fairly quick rate of fire to boot, though the damage makes up for that by being low. A short while later, we find his ship, the Equitus, and give chase, putting the Puckle gun through its paces, clearing the mines left behind in the ship's wake. Right as we might have him cornered, he seems to have went to the same shipwright that we did, having an ice break over his own, giving us a chance to test ours as we follow. Soon as we break through the ice and round a berg, we get ambushed by 3 gunboats and a brig. Failing to move out of the way, we get a good long look at what the boarding mechanic is like when I mentioned it earlier. Beating off the men who boarded our vessel, we quickly gun down the rest of the boats before giving chase to Smith once more. Managing to corner him, we have to dodge as his ship sets the sea ablaze, a dirty little trick that only delays the inevitable. Reaching the shores of Terra Nova, we somehow avoid detection and bolt up the trees, only for Smith to have fallen into the water. and as a result become completely invincible to all attacks except for exposure. In a different timeline, we bolt up some trees, making our way unseen through the canopy, taking a sniper off his perch before leaping down and driving our blade through Samuel Smith's chest.
This cannot be. No! Do you even know what that is?
An ancient artifact. Treasure from those who came before.
Yes. It matters not. Some of the greatest scientific minds of all Europe could not make it work.
Now all I need is the manuscript, and all shall be revealed.
A fairly quick scene when compared to some of the others, and while not revealing some grand design or regret, it does show that the Assassins and Templars are on the same footing for figuring out how the hell this little box works. Not even the greatest minds in all of Europe could make sense of it. This victory is rather hollow. Samuel Smith was the Templars' treasurer, so it is little surprise that he was the one sent to Europe to try and glean information from the greatest minds there, given his assumed connections. While I'm writing these, I have the characters' wiki pages open, hence putting smaller notes which may not be immediately known to people about certain characters, but for Smith, his page is damn near empty. No major secret, no massive historical counterpart, as all others of the same name died far after 1754, resulting in a rather lackluster set of paragraphs in this script about him beyond the fact that he was drinking buddies with Gist. Completing the mission, we sail into the town of Albany. A few months have passed since our last assassination. We make our way to a small hill and spook Hope and Liam. As it turns out, as a trained assassin, Shay is fairly good at stealth. A red-headed giant has gotten into a little bit of a scuffle at Germanville Glen, resulting in the death of a French commander, sparking all-out war. And more relevant matters to us, James Wardrop has now become leader of this chapter of Templars due to the sudden increase of open positions, gaining all resources to be used at his whims, and, more importantly, he holds the manuscript. Orders have not changed. Finding the manuscript, with Hope and Liam making sure that there are no leaks. Reaching the Congress undetected, we see a few old faces, Benjamin Franklin and Templar William Johnson. Finishing his join or die speech, Johnson thanks Franklin for his research into a rather charged field, with plans expressed to electrify the artifact.
A rousing speech, Master Franklin. But do you truly believe Great Britain will grant our colonies autonomy?
They have little choice, Master Johnson. You know the remoteness of this frontier better than most.
Yes, but let us leave politics for another day. I wanted to thank you for your research.
Of course, of course. In the brief time I could examine that box, I could tell it was something unique. From ancient Egypt, you said? Well, as I mentioned in my letter, I am quite ready to electrify it.
Excellent. We will have the box delivered shortly. As for the manuscript, Captain?
A slight hiccup appears in the plan, with Wardrop refusing to hand the artifact over, given the risks that he, for some reason, thinks are possible. This makes Franklin a little bit disappointed, given his wide scope of invention, even creating one of the first batteries, and being quite the ladies' man during his time in Paris as a diplomat. Some threats get exchanged, and our unlucky captain starts sprinting as if his life depends on it, which, knowing Johnson's personality, is not an unreasonable fear to have. But that matters not, as we pierce his back with a rope dart and drag him into our blade. Sneaking into the fort from the rooftops, we enter through a side in a fairly simplistic manner. Just a few guards to be dealt with, and the most trouble you get is the annoying habit of assassination prompts not registering, but through a little trial and error, those are quickly solved. Finding our prey, second verse, same as the first. It seems gravity is also among the list of things that Shay makes his own of.
I'll take that, you Templar dog.
No! You have no idea what you're doing, fool!
Keeping the people free from your control.
How free will you be when the French undermine these squabbling colonies?
These colonies would be far better off without the Templars pulling the strings.
We bring order from chaos. If everything is permitted, no one is safe.
Even the devil can quote scripture to suit his own purposes.
Ripping the book from his hands, we have a little back and forth. The usual conflict of order and safety versus freedom and absolute freedom, bringing out questions of the Creed's motto. Wardrop, like Smith, has no real historical counterpart as far as I can tell. He came from a family of Templars, and he is one of the most horrid things a man can be, a politician. His role within the Order was to secure land and assets for use by the others, along with gaining trade routes. His character is generally what you expect from a background politician who gets his way by twisting the law to his own means, though, as an interesting note, he could not hold his booze, according to Quartermaster Gist. Unsurprisingly, having a fairly sparse wiki page, we make our exit from the fort and sail to the town of Sleepy Hollow to rendezvous with Hope and Benjamin Franklin. Knowing nothing about the Templar and Assassin orders, shockingly, Benjamin Franklin continues to make appearances in moderately pivotal moments to decode artifacts while ignoring the conflict as a whole, to the point that I have created a new section of the video. Franklin's Facts. If left up to him, the national bird of the United States of America would have been the turkey. Both the Sky and Assassin are getting temperamental, as we are informed that we must delay our project, with items being confiscated by the British troops, giving us a tailing mission to find a soldier, then grab the rods while he turns his back. This vivifies a rather dejected Franklin, who darts back and forth, shoving a few items into Hope's hands as he sets up the apparatus. Spotting the soldier, we follow him along as he deposits them, slipping in, grabbing them, as rain starts to pour down, as we sprint back, doing our best to stay dry. Arriving back at the rods, they get set up, maybe being a little too careless for my comfort given the ongoing circumstances. A few near cardiac events and near involuntary defibrillations later, the box gets wired up, as we're blown back and find a projection of the globe with pings on what seem to be Port-au-Prince, Lisbon, and somewhere past the Arctic Circle. With the information we need gathered, we grab the box, as Hope decides to help Franklin for a little bit, taking the role of his simple housekeeper.
What about you?
I'm a devoted housekeeper.
Right.
Scrambling back to our ship, we kill the Headless Horseman, who lacks any and all heads, and in fact, appears to be a grunt, as opposed to the normal variation in the story with Ichabod Crane. And we do this via ballistic injection to a Q-Corbin. Heading back to Hope and Achilles, we figure out its exact location, and for once, Hope is fairly respectful to us, given that the ball is now fully in our court, and it's ours to do with as we see fit. This task is charged to us, and us alone, given our very intimate knowledge of the area. Shipping out to Lisbon on our lonesome, Liam has been sent somewhere else. This is a mission for us to truly show that we are worth this. Hard cut away, and we enter Lisbon, and specifically Convento de Ordem do Carmo, or the Covenant of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Yet again, a real place in Lisbon that looks like it would be breathtaking to visit. Lisbon is one of those places that really shows how the 8-month development cycle of the game cut down spots. Having a grand total of 10 minutes and some change spent in the mission Kyrie Eleison, taking place in Lisbon itself, which is a shame, given that there were plans to explore the city much further. I believe there was even a whole section meant to be here. For as much as I enjoy the sea and wilderness of the Kenway saga, you can't really beat an old-fashioned city setting when it comes to Assassin's Creed. Lisbon is nothing more than a set piece. We have ourselves a rather simplistic parkour puzzle inside the Covenant, hitting buttons with different alchemical symbols on them to raise and then lower a bit in the floor. And then we have a chase scene that, while fun the first few times you play, does end up becoming a little bit weak on repeat runs. But what we do see of Lisbon is nice. The huge cathedral building, very reminiscent of past puzzles from the Ezio games, even if it is dumbed down a bit to just navigating simple parkour and shoving our blade into locking mechanisms locked by 4 major alchemical symbols easily seen without eagle vision, even if we are directed to use it. During this whole bit of free running, we see a good Roman Catholic Mass taking place. Somehow, they end up ignoring the hooded Irishman scampering across the rafters, and then the massive fucking elevator appearing in the center of the floor. Sinking into the floor, we enter the precursor site, and I think it's worth just letting the gameplay here run on its own as we pluck the artifact from the seismic temple. The earthquake in Lisbon is potentially one of the most devastating events to happen during that time frame. Up to 40,000 people died in this event, with 50,000 casualties happening alongside in Lisbon, with another 10,000 dying in Morocco. And as if the earthquakes weren't enough, a mere 40 minutes later, 3 massive tidal waves would sweep into the city, completely engulfing the port and downtown areas, with the massive candles lit for All Saints' Day being knocked over, resulting in a blaze so hot and fierce that reportedly asphyxiated people from over 80 feet away. As a result, 14% of the population of Lisbon died in this event, and it would inspire many of the Enlightenment-era philosophers to question the Catholic faith as they knew it.
How could God do this to them? God had nothing to do with this.
After having a month at sea to let his rage simmer and grow, without anyone like Liam to talk to about the tragedy, to talk him down, to try and get him to a more reasonable state, Shay is completely enraged. There is no chance of seeing reason, even if it were offered by the assassins. But of course, hope gives no chance for this to happen, with Achilles not being much better. Liam ever faithful to the creed, even if it puts him at odds with his friends, clearly does attempt to get some people in a state where they can even pretend to have a conversation, but that goes nowhere, leaving Shay to see a single choice, and in his shoes, it's reasonable enough one to make. He is to strike out and pave his own way. Slinking inside Davenport Manor, we find our Rubicon and cross it, right as our former mentor enters the room. We scuffle back and forth, first verbally, and then, when they don't see eye to eye, fist to fist, as our head goes through the window, tossed across the room. Achilles' leg is a primary target yet again of someone as we dive out of the window and make a mad dash to somewhere. Blitzing through the woods, we dodge the very trigger-happy Captain Joseph on the mortar, bombarding every square inch of the homestead. We make it past our former allies, all shouting something about our insanity and betrayal. And then we're backed to a corner, a cliff on the edge of the property. Here we are confronted by our former allies and teacher. A final bargain is thrown out, and it falls on deaf ears, as Shay, in turn, tries to throw himself into the icy brine, overcome by grief over what his actions caused, as a pistol shot cracks out, giving us a little push on the way down, smashing into the rocks down below. A fall that would kill a demigod, much less a normal man, as the Animus glitches out. With our next adventure given a 90% chance of survival by the higher-ups at the company, those odds seem pretty good. We forge ahead as we appear in what is very clearly a European city. And exploring a little, it appears to be the very same city that people on an Xbox One would be roaming in and around when the buzz of this game was about in the classrooms when I was young. Paris. Yet again, we find Benjamin Franklin, the inventor of the first flexible catheter, getting it involved tangentially with the conflict as a small band of assassin thugs attempt to kill him. Quickly dealing with them, we get spat back out into the office and meet with Berg in person. Having already touched on Osto Berg and his involvement along with the modern-day segment, we get the server running again, head back into our Animus, and continue our little exploration of Shay. With the first act of the game finished, I think it's safe to give my thoughts on some of the things so long as we're here. And with it, during writing we just hit page 11 of the script in Times New Roman, and for recording we just hit page 20. Having played the game for the first time in a few years since I decided to go back and play every Assassin's Creed game, it has been wonderful to come back to the series and remind me as of why everyone in my school was raving about this series as a whole, even if this game is very clearly rushed in some areas. The movement feels good, and while the parkour has a decent amount of structures you can use, it is also very clear they had to make do with the limited structures found in colonial America, but that has always been a part of the Anvil Next games. The outfits look sharp as a whole, and the weapons, while lacking in variety, and rather unfortunate at that, is simply a part of a rather unfortunate trend found in the games. At this point, something I greatly appreciate is that this game expects you to have played at least one of the other games beforehand, and as such, you get most of your toolkit unlocked from the start, letting me use the favorite weapon of mine right from jump, the rope dart. The other weapon we have, the dart gun, while just a reskinned blowgun, is a fun weapon to use. Using any of the same status effects used in weapons past with decent range, and getting me more than cleared of a few tight scenarios. The map is what you expect from a Ubisoft game. Collectibles everywhere, outposts and watchtowers to clear and synchronize with, more chests than you could shake a stick at, and under it, a lovely looking world based off of historical locations. The side missions will be touched on in a few paragraphs, but overall, the game is what you expect from Ubisoft, for better and for worse. As the Animus loads us back, we find Shay getting carried away by some soldiers and placed on what looks like a bed. Obvious comments from our boss aside, we begin sequence 3 in our new city, some 300 miles away from the likely location of Davenport Manor. We wake up in the house of the Finnegans, with Cassidy and Barry Finnegan having taken care of us during our recovery from our ballistic-induced fall. They're your normal couple, loving wife with a bit of a gruff husband, both having a heart of gold. Hearing the door open, they decide to head down and let us recover a little bit, getting our bearings and all that, only to let out a scream a few seconds later. Hobbling down the stairs, we go past a miniature mountain lion seemingly owned by the Finnegans as a fight breaks out, with a wounded Shay being able to easily turn these gang members, who look strikingly similar to the thugs used by the assassins, into groaning piles on the floor. Having gained the respect of Barry the old-fashioned way, we are gifted a set of robes from Cassidy. We suit up, have a quick shave, and the rogue theme starts playing as we enter.
Don't you look a right gentleman?
Cass. Did I have a book with me?
Just those peculiar weapons.
Thank you both. If you'll excuse me.
These are Templar robes, or at least were Templar robes. Inquiring about the book we had with us, currently being missing, they have no idea. Best option, it's sitting somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic, where we meant to lie. Worst case scenario, it was grabbed by whoever gave us to the Finnegans. These Templar robes look sharp as ever, as we exit and have to chase down a pair of rather skilled free runners who manages to grab some backup before, once more, getting beat to a pulp and eventually spilling the location of his boss, who ordered them to shake down the Finnegans. Rushing over, we find the headquarters and are introduced to one of the many side activities within the game, wiping out the gang headquarters and returning order to the city. For being in the employ of the assassins, namely Hope, the massive flag carrying the Assassin's Creed crest waving above the fortress is a little bit stupid and strange, and while I'm sure you could find an in-world reason, it clearly is only there for the player and feels very nonsensical to me. Getting a new mechanic introduced to us, we have the Whisper Screen. It's something, maybe Shay's Sixth Sense, maybe just a game mechanic, but whatever it is, the screen will go foggy on the edges and you will hear whispering, alerting you that there's someone nearby. When we activate Eagle Vision, we get a red proximity circle that we can use to locate the gang leader, one of our two targets, with the other being the flag raised in the center of the compound. Both are simple enough to do. There isn't much one can do to combat being impaled from above with a sword. As we enter and burn the flag, someone comes to greet us. George Monroe. Yet another real historical figure, being born in the Kingdom of Ireland in the year 1700 or 1701. Sent to help the elder Washington make any sort of progress, which he was deemed to be lacking according to the British right. We would find him working hand in hand with Grandmaster Hatham Kenway in order to help expedite the Templar plots. He is a good example of all that is good and holy about the Templars, truly caring about the colonies and their citizens, even if it is in more of a guiding, fatherly manner than anything else. He shows us his conviction by helping with some of the side activities, namely urban restoration. This increases your cash flow and uses the same set of materials used to upgrade the Morrigan. Being close friends with the Finnegans, it seems that their son inherited a few of the ideas of Monroe, being a man of the people before he ended up dying to unknown causes. A current speculation is a severe case of plot pointitis, a different interpretation of the freedom and guidance than what the assassins have, and seemingly different to what your average Templar would have. Monroe is an interesting character, and after repairing the buildings, let's touch on the other side activities that are available to us at this time. Beyond looking for every collectible in the game to unlock other items, which may look neat, but are fairly useless, though they do contain some benefits, as provided by in a nice list by this Reddit user, there are a few activities we can seek out. First up, we have assassin interceptions. In previous games, we could find missions of assassinating targets by going to pigeon coops, which were fairly fun, but more of the same gameplay, though they could expand the story a little bit, mainly of the world as a whole. Being as a Templar, we get to do the exact opposite. Finding the birds after they've been released by the assassins who've claimed their marks and approaching their targets, our first thing to do is find the target, and, as the name of the mission suggests, intercept the assassins. Normally, these are given a timer, which ends up testing your ability to move through the environment quickly should you want the bonus after killing all of the incoming assassins. However, the final interception is a bit different, with it being a trap set to capture you, and, once finished, you unlock the Templar Enforcer outfit, which, like all of Shay's outfits, is rather nice looking, and in fact, the one I use on my main save. Up next, urban renovation. As shown before, urban renovation upgrades the buildings around you. These increase your cash flow and give you a reward. The catch is, you need to bring the fort or gang headquarters under Templar control before you can do these. These are mostly just running back and forth between your ship to gather supplies and the renovation site to make sure you have the right type of supplies. All in all, not really worth messing with compared to the other bits of side content, given, unlike Assassin's Creed 3, you don't get new stories from the settlers you hear. Once a district is liberated, we have the taverns. You can get leads on big scores of cargo, listen to music, get your ass kicked at 3 variations of checkers. To unlock these, all you need to do is enter the tavern to get a drink, bump into a few ruffians, beat the piss out of them, and the tavern is ours. Same as in previous games, no real fanfare to add here, other than I suck at digital checkers no matter what the variation. Along your sailing and unlocking through taverns, you will find supply caravans and outposts to raid. Again, this is what it says on the tin. Go in, stab a bunch of dudes, find the location of the supplies, grab them, slip out. Out and about are the Templar maps, and keys to unlock different armor and weapon sets. Same as Black Flag again, go to the chords, X marks the spot, line it up, and start digging. A variation on, everyone take a shot with me at this point, found in Black Flag, are the native puzzles. With these, you have a light path to line up on a pillar. These are found by going into eagle vision while standing on a certain rock past a hardcore puzzle of sorts. And then you collect your key to unlock a suit of native armor themed around, take a guess, a native tribe, and another set being found of Norse origin via the sword fragments you can collect throughout your journeys. Again, coming from Black Flag are the legendary ships. Massive battles to test your might and naval prowess with rewards to follow. Having one of the most difficult fights I have ever dealt with and lost footage of during recording being Storm Fortress. A massive ship that loves the use of artillery. Pouring another round of spirit for the crowds, we have the fleet missions. From my memory, there was an app to control these, just as it was in Black Flag, but with the ships you capture, you can send them to your fleet to join an ongoing campaign to undo all of the work you did in Black Flag. These come with a mix of rewards that you can see in the old fort back in New York. These are aggressively simple. Clear the pathway with 3 ships. Once the danger level is low enough, continue onward, hit start mission, and wait for the mission to be finished. Being added at the 11th hour is the hunting challenges. As it almost slipped through the cracks, we have another shot going down the hatch. These involve killing a certain amount of animals in a time frame. Fairly simple, and we unlock an outfit at the end of it. With the side activities covered, let's get back to the actual story that matters. Heading back to the Finnegan's house, we find Monroe has beat us there, and shared our exploits with the couple.
Shay, Colonel Monroe told us what happened.
You, sir, are a fool. But thanks.
Getting a moment alone, we were tasked with rescuing our future quartermaster, Gist, who had found the gangs looking into manufacturing new weaponry. On a timer, we scramble across the rooftops and enter the old fort. Shooting the rope and dying at the same time, we reload and fight on, with Gist blowing up a few barrels to help clear the crowds. Finally having a moment to talk, we start heading to clear a ship docked. Just because there might be a few more. Turns out, it's the Morrigan. Whisper Screen comes back to show us how to draw out stalkers. A fun enemy to have to work around, as they can quickly decimate your health should they get the jump on you. Clearing the ship is quick work, and as we get a crew to sail to Albany, Gist conveniently left a position open for himself. Quartermaster. But someone's got to keep an eye on this former assassin, as he proves himself to this Templar order.
As your first mate, may I suggest our next destination? The Colonel will be expecting me to report back.
My thoughts exactly. Colonel Monroe said he'd be in Albany.
Sailing into the waves, we pick Gist's brain a little for how he views the Templars and their doctrine.
Not at all, Shay. But I admire the Colonel's ideals and want to make them happen.
What kind of ideals?
Secure borders, prosperous farms, fair trade. We need those in these wretched colonies.
Sounds like a high-minded utopia.
Pulling into port, we ignored the warning to upgrade our vessel, and have been given a new mission. Our goal is to preemptively stop the assault on New York, but first, we must upgrade our ship. Heading to the outpost, we get some background on the current mindset of this duo and the local chapter of the Templar Order.
It is an economic incursion more than a geographical one. Some of the ruffians are sponsored by enemies of the colonies. They intend to undermine the local authorities.
I've heard they steal from civilians and resell essential goods for 10 times the price.
It's always the little fella who gets skinned. Colonel, you and Gist here seem inspired. Is there something in the water? Or in the whiskey?
Now, why do you say that, Master Cormac?
I think Shay here is skeptical about our intentions towards our fellow man.
I understand, but there is no need. I simply want these colonies to be a place of safety, development, and purpose.
Funny. I thought rich men wanted them to be a place of profit.
I am not a rich man, Master Cormac. Money is a means to an end, not an end in and of itself.
That's you. I think it's a fine end to a game of cards.
Getting some mortars, we can now advance on the fort and take it over. These fortified positions can be difficult to balance your focus on, particularly at low levels, which I find to be optimal time for playing this game. You can have ships targeting you, random bounty hunters show up, mortar and cannon barrages to dodge through. All in all, it takes a good amount of juggling. Assaulting the fort from the harbor, we have one of the randomly generated goals, in this case, to kill the lookouts. A simple task made far more difficult with my sudden bouts of incompetence. Entering the war room after slaughtering a few more soldiers, pleasantries are exchanged, and clearly, both sides know why the other is here. We find ourselves face to face with one of our spies, Le Sacheux. With it, we clash. Tables and furniture are thrown, Shay pleading. And as the battle happens, we strike our final blow, seeing the mutual respect these two had for each other, leaving Shay to try and rationalize the fact that he just killed one of his former comrades.
You are always good at your business, Shay.
As were you. Tell me, what are you doing inland?
Special weapons. Poisonous gases to use against colonial authorities. I am merely a delivery man.
Then may your final delivery be swift.
Having previously covered the Cormac fleet side activity, we sail back to New York to destroy the poison gas supply. And meeting with Monroe, we're getting a quick debriefing on our mission.
Lawbreakers are changing tactics.
What's their plan now?
Their boss has hired Benjamin Franklin to produce new weapons for them. He's very well guarded.
Benjamin Franklin? The scientist?
You have heard of him? Good. He is making equipment to spread gases among the populace. Toxic ones, as it turns out.
The populace? I thought they would use it against the authorities. Though that would be terrible as well.
The ruffians we have arrested refer to an intimidating woman. I believe she is behind these nefarious plans.
I look into this.
Thank you.
Hope. I pray it's not you.
Yet again, we find ourselves going to meet our supporter of air baths. Just sitting nude in your kitchen or garden for a while supposedly helps your health. Benjamin Franklin. Slipping past security and slaughtering the few who do spot us, Franklin is his usual self, handing over something of extreme importance as if it were nothing in the world. Before pivoting to something significantly more important, his upcoming lectures in London and Europe. Our worst fears are confirmed, as we are given a grenade launcher meant for Hope. It's a shame. For all our hopes that it wasn't her, turns out it is. And while I'm sure these actions taken by Hope violate the creed in some sort, if I had to guess, don't have excess collateral damage of civilians. Right on time, Colonel Monroe strides in and gives us a task: strengthen our resolve with gunpowder. While this is very much a tactic to get Shay to fully throw his weight behind the Templars. Monroe is definitely coming across as more of a fatherly figure right now, but it definitely seems like Shay could use one at this time. Taking his advice to heart, we find the manufacturing place and start blowing these holding tanks apart. Nothing much of a challenge. As we get out of the blast zone, the explosion tears through the street. Heading back to Monroe, it seems his advice holds true. A little bit more of our doubts have been burnt. Same with all the assassins left inside the compound. Turned to ash. Here, we get formally introduced to 2 additional members of the Templar Order, Jack Weeks and William Johnson. Just the carefree gentleman, as always, invites us to a company dinner, complete with the regional boss, who really doesn't want to be there. But he has to. It boosts the morale of the normal workers, or something. That's what HR keeps telling him. Some doubts still floating about. We are reminded that we are among friends here, however strange they may be. Jumping forward a year and some change, we see Shay opening a package in the captain's quarters of the Morrigan. It's a manuscript we had. The same manuscript we hoped was at the bottom of the Atlantic, along with a note from the Colonel.
From the Colonel?
Dear Master Cormac, my apologies for the brevity of this missive, but it is time we were honest with one another. You have demonstrated your loyalty and resourcefulness to the Templar cause, and this despite, and perhaps because of, your assassin origins. The manuscript the assassins sought has been in my possession for some time. I reclaimed it when my men found you marooned. The Grand Master himself charged me to discover its meaning, a task I regret I have failed to complete. I leave it in your charge, Master Cormac. There is no one else I trust more. Now I leave for Fort William Henry, an ill-prepared garrison surrounded by hostile natives and the French army. We have requested reinforcements, but I doubt they will be forthcoming. I have no illusions that our resistance will be successful. I commit my life to the British Army, and my soul to the Father of Understanding. Yours, Colonel George Monroe.
Bolting upstairs, we inform Gist about the Colonel's predicament, who is his usual, probably slightly inebriated self. Unsurprising to all but Shay, it appears even a drunkard can figure out that the man who scrambles about in trees like a cat avoiding firefighters while stabbing people with an arm blade might be an assassin. Interestingly enough, it seems that the group as a whole gave Shay the freedom to make his own decisions, seemingly something that a good deal of Templars make the choice to join of their own free will. Granted, some of them, in fact, most, are joining for less than noble ideals, but I've heard that this idea is something that is explored a little in the Desmond recordings found in Valhalla, a game that I have yet to finish. We also get mention of a strange Grand Master, and slightly more importantly, the implication that Gist is plowing, or has met, one of the king's mistresses. Making quick landfall, we find Weeks posted on a small cliff face, and with it, find that the terms of surrender have been reached between the Colonel and the French, though, with the Abenaki not being fond of following these terms, it would result in what would become one of the most notorious events of the French-Indian War. It is estimated that over 2,300 individuals, citizens, civilians, and non-combatants, were captured, scalped, or sold into slavery by the Abenaki at this time. Actions that, without a shadow of a doubt, violate the creed, and as a result, would influence how British commanders would conduct themselves in the future of this war. Having made our way to Monroe, we see what appear to be assassin forces assaulting the British column, which would have been running low on ammunition at this time, as part of the agreement set forth between the two commanders. Fighting back this current force, we urge Monroe to keep moving. We're not out of the woods yet, discussing the current state that they're in. Considering the massive influx of stalkers and assassin gang members, it's little surprise that we find who's leading the ambush up ahead, Kasigawase. And he is a little shocked to find that a man who got shot in the back with a flintlock smoothbore pistol with a bullet roughly the size of a large marble, who fell a few dozen feet minimum off of a tall cliff, smashed against the fairly sharp rocks at the bottom of it, got dragged into the ocean, and was spat out in New York some 300 miles away, could survive that whole event. Continuing to defend Monroe, we now become the vanguard, clearing the way against snipers and other miscreants. And as a side note, this little valley is one of my favorite looking areas in the game, with the streams and waterfall against the lush undergrowth, having wonderful contrast, making it look like it would be a prime picnic and cliff diving spot in summer. Having cleared the way ahead, we make it to the final stretch on the Morgan, a final mad dash to get aboard, as one final effort is made by Kasigawase to get on board. We promptly get him off our ass by throwing a powder keg and putting Liam's pistol training to good use, filling our former comrade's face with shrapnel and leaving a mighty big gunpowder spot on his face. With debts repaid, we head out to Okwaga and the old growth forests, lest more innocent blood be shed here. Arriving at night, we greet Weeks and Monroe, confronting him about his knowledge of our past, and he shows his trust in us once more, seeming to have given us the freedom to choose what path we set out on, given our new lease on life. Having our new job given to us by them, we head out to slow the advance of French forces, while Weeks goes on to Albany to shore up the fortifications. Running to the village, we find some of the troops attempting to get information out of the locals, and as such, we free them, doing our best to minimize casualties. Quick work is made of them, and we are thanked by one of their elders, being told a little of their history, and get shown the armor set we can unlock if we do the pillar puzzles. Civilians saved, we cross the strait, and fight off the advanced force sent by the French with ease. Something that, due to another random bout of incompetence, took me upwards of 3 tries to get it done. Ignoring these concerning bouts, this is easily the shortest mission in the game, I feel. And while there are some notable things about it, namely the conversations with Monroe, it is a bit of a nothing burger, introducing a collectible reward that is only okay in terms of its looks, and falls rather flat compared to most of the other Templar gear. Somehow, having lost this recording, we do a little Animus magic on my main save, and sail towards Albany, seeing Kasigawase has already beat us there by some time. Burning flotsam covers the waves as we rush into the smoldering city, darting over the rooftops, aiming to reach the fort where Monroe is sure to have holed up. Beating back the assault, we meet up with Monroe as he attempts to hand off the manuscript to us, before we break ranks and give him an order, sending him back to the Morgan to keep the manuscript safe. As we do this, we see Kasigawase joining the assault in earnest. While in the past I've used the puckle gun to kill him, this time old-fashioned steel and smoke will do the trick.
We trained you well, traitor!
Kasigawase, it didn't have to be this way.
It did. You are an enemy. Achilles will see you dead.
What he's doing is wrong. Who are you to judge? The Templars will fail. You will fail. Monroe is already dead.
Pinning him to the wall with his tomahawk, yet again apologizing for Shay's actions. Shay gets praised for his skills. Seems only in death do they find us worth laudation. And Monroe, he's already been snagged by Liam. Running towards the dock, we hear talk of his axe, unfortunately never shown in game. As we run back, we pass a burning house, hearing some soldiers talking that Monroe is trapped inside. Without a second thought for our own safety, we burst in, scrambling to find him and pulling Monroe out before the flames fully consume him. And seemingly, we do, as he is remarkably fine, at least in appearance, for a man who was trapped inside a fiery house, though that is purely a game model thing. Carrying the man who saved us outside, we hold him, trying to comfort and reassure him as he dies. Taking his signet ring, and taking one final step into our new life. Entering the old fort in New York, we find ourselves in a darkened room. To what is absolutely not a cult or mafia induction. Swearing his life to a new secret order, the members are faces, both old and new. Weeks, Gist, Lee, Johnson, and the Grand Master himself, Kenway. It's little moments like this that help this game earn its keep, in my opinion. For all the faults it does have, seeing an introduction to a building that we've fought for, with characters you recognize, makes a little part of my brain tingle with joy. Though admittedly, it is rather short-lived joy, given the fact that, after all, this is the only time we really do see Lee. Switching back to modern day, the same bit as in the previous section. Talk to some folks, clear the mainframe, wander around a little, hop back into Animus, and get ready to explore a little bit more. Back in Paris, we yet again are looking for the inventor of handheld swim fins and bifocals, Benjamin Franklin. Skulking across the rooftops again, we find Franklin and save his life as he's been dragged into a back alley and is most likely going to be found floating down the Seine by sundown if we don't intervene. Thanking Shay for his timely intervention, but fearing for his family's safety, we act as a vanguard, clearing the way forward, removing 3 criminals as we do so from the sky. As he steps into his house, we fend off another round of brigands before, eventually, receiving a favor, a potential invitation to Versailles in a few days' time for some personal business. A date that, while not immediately apparent, is rather important for the series as a whole. Back at the old fort, we get to talking with Kenway about the sites. Seeing as we are one of the foremost experts in that field as of right now, that really just means we've walked around one once a few years ago, and we aren't dead or insane. Bringing Kenway up to speed on the seismic temples, clearly Shay still holding regret, we are dispatched to find one James Cook. But not before Hatham gives his best unimpressed father impression.
Colonel Monroe spoke highly of you, Shay. He was convinced you could become the best among us. I expect you will not disappoint.
I don't plan to, sir.
Don't disappoint. Sailing through the North Atlantic, we get a quick debriefing about Cook from one of our foremost trusted allies, Gist. James Cook is one of the foremost explorers of the Pacific Ocean, and seemingly an expert in most anything that's been written down on parchment. He is a wonderful mind, but unfortunately, he does suffer from a severe case of loose lips. Our target is the fort of Louisbourg, considered a linchpin given its location at the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, giving, should it fall, completely unmolested reign to Quebec and Montreal, putting the naval supremacy of the British Empire to good use. Finding our way onto the HMS Pembroke, we rendezvous with Kenway and Cook. While the Battle of Cartagena had prevented a vast majority of the Mediterranean fleet from reinforcing the French allies at the fort, they are still fighting their damnedest to keep this keystone position, throwing a preemptive strike to try and weaken any invading force with the limited resources available. Of the 11 ships currently stationed at the fort, 5 were scuttled to block the harbor entrance. 1 was captured by the British as it tried to flee in the heavy fog of the days before, leaving 5 main ships to face the British fleet at the real battle. Throughout this whole scene, Kenway is his usual imperious self, seeming very done and annoyed with the antics of the other 3. Entering the waters near the fort, the air is thick with smoke and cinder, turning the sky pink with its flame. And as we enter the range of their guns, the battle begins. It's always been a blast whenever we get the chance to pilot a vessel of such massive firepower. While slow and cumbersome, the Pembroke and her 60 guns tear apart anything that get into our range. As the fleet is sent below, we see a rather familiar face, as Adewale sends forth a storm of fireships, covering his escape on his vessel. Should these make contact, they would do untold damage to the Pembroke, and with it, the advanced force sent to destroy the 2 final ships holding the harbor. Coming 2 waves of just fire ships, we beat them back, and a third is accompanied by a man-of-war and 2 frigates. I would very much consider this battle to be a set-piece moment, as while you can take damage and lose, you are handed all the tools you need to easily clear this mission. I feel the most important part about this mission is you get that trademark Assassin's Creed being able to take place in such a historically significant moment of the war. Having cleared the way as much as we can, we see another man-of-war flanked by 4 frigates, each bearing down at us. And at the final moments, as we're about to give our life, not for honor, but for you, the Royal Navy swoops in, sending a barrage of mortar fire to damn these vessels to oblivion. And while it is most likely a simple matter of the models not being the finest in the world, Kenway's mild, annoyed look at any situation, no matter how severe, joyous, or horrid, never ceases to amuse me, as he does sour our victory a little, remarking about Adewale's escape. And in turn, we promise Kenway one last dance with his father's former mate. Sailing off somewhere in the North Atlantic, Shay and Gist get to talking about Adewale and their experience with him. Shay finds Adewale to be a good man, and it's a shame he has to die, with Gist retorting about how Washington and his crew were good men as well. Though, with the bias clear on both sides, Gist tries to shift to a new topic of conversation before we shut him down. We have no desire to hear any more tales about old Uncle Jedediah. I've checked both Wikipedia pages and fan wikis. No such character exists. Sailing through the river valley, we meet back up with Cook and a still irked Kenway.
Gentlemen, once again, Captain Cook's resourcefulness has served us well.
I have located the man you were seeking.
Adewale?
Exactly. He was last seen in the French fort not 2 leagues from here along the river.
What would that scallywag be doing on a French fort?
Refitting his vessel, I suppose, after Louisburg.
Thank you, Master Cook. We'll take it from here.
Farewell and Godspeed, gentlemen.
The fort's just up ahead.
Good. Let us continue onward.
Finding the fort and the behemoth of a vessel around it, we continue to make our way along, staying out of sight to try and cut off the vessel. the withering silence of the perpetually annoyed Kenway and Shay's inner conflict quickly shut Gist up before he can regale us with another tale of some noble woman he had a romp in the hay with, as Shay has his own moment of verbal suicide, throwing out his own catchphrase at a rather unopportune moment to Kenway.
I make my own luck, Master Kenway.
Slipping in through the back of the fortifications, we remove what French forces stand in our way before getting to the compound proper, the only thing of note on our way being a rather large bear. As we make our way through the compound, we find Adewale waiting on the cliff face, and as we approach him, he jumps onto his vessel, and after a short fight, we get led to a dead-end lake. Being the rather intelligent man that Adewale is, it appears he's choosing his own battleground.
Adewale's beached his ship!
A novel tactic?
He's saving his crew.
No. He's making a last stand. Let's not disappoint him.
After all, he did manage to get a whole side game after him. A short naval engagement later, we bring his ship close to sinking before his final play is made. A rather desperate attempt to save his crew or make a last stand, who can say? But, using his ship as an access point, we quickly scale the cliff face, and hear some back and forth talking between the younger Kenway and his father's friend, before we eventually get spotted and make a break for the cliffs to intercept Adewale somehow. And we manage to catch him as collateral and attack. These finishers have really strange targeting.
Forgive me, Adewale.
You dare beg forgiveness, child? Hell welcomes traitors like you.
Then I go there proudly, knowing I have done right.
It does not matter. Achilles already has what he needs.
I will kill every last man who defends him if I must. I cannot let him succeed.
You have become a monster, Shay.
Perhaps I have.
It seems Achilles has all he needs. We try to show Adewale the respect he deserves, but Shay gets none in return from Adewale, only being viewed as a traitor, fit for the cold pits of hell. As unbothered as ever, Kenway walks through the confession scene, keeping moving as we turn our gaze elsewhere. One pin has fallen. Only a few more left to go. Yet another time skip is upon us. Shay returns to our band of conspirators with rather terrible news. The assassins have found a way to make the box work. And with the timeline being as it is, it has been moved forward significantly. But first, before we go romping across the world, the gangs in New York need to be dealt with. And with the authorities not providing much help, it looks like it might be time to run a false flag operation to make them care. Having been told to go commit a huge crime spree, Weeks and Shay make the most of it, snagging some gang colors off of two thugs. Shay quickly brings them low with rope darts. Quick change of costume later, and we enter one of the hardest missions in the game to get the optional objectives of being told to loot the treasury of a fort, free the prisoners, and raise the gang's colors, and do it all before reinforcements arrive in 4 minutes. Just that alone would put your skills to the test, but it's not too hard to do. But here's the rub. To get the optional achievements, you have to lockpick 2 doors and loot every chest within that time frame. That's raised the bar a little. Making our way through the fort, all gets done save for the optional objectives. As Shay regroups with Weeks, we view the aftermath. A little martial law seems to be put in place, which never hurt anyone. Finally got around to editing this segment. That line was recorded way back, way before the South Korea martial law shit happened. Topical bullshit, I guess. Back to the video. With New York's future set in stone for the next little while, our current objective is complete. And with that, Phase 2 of Kenway's plan to flush out Hope and the assassins is in full effect. Finding Kenway, he is currently making a gang member's day the worst and last it will ever be.
If you don't tell, he'll kill you.
She's in that big mansion. The one with the gardens.
Shall we go?
Finding the mansion currently besieged by the British Army, we get confirmation that Hope is inside, and with that, we will soon have ourselves another box to check off. Heading up to the roof and looking down through the glass ceiling, a rather intense moment as Hope, clearly not being a fool and knowing Shay's penchant for falling down on people blades first, shoots the glass out from under us. With a rather intense game of the floor is mustard gas, we quickly run out to the gardens, making our way through the quick bit of parkour and free running that needs to be done to get outside. Hope is waiting for us. Seems all those years of training such an interesting fellow has led her to anticipate his concerning survivability. Exiting the room, we get hit with a poison of some sort. If I had to guess, a variety of hyped up beta blockers, slowing Shay's heart down, so the only way to survive is keep running and our heart beat up if we want to stay alive long enough to get a cure. Following Hope, the chase goes on far, far too long, as we play a rather boring and deadly game of tag around the city, where if we stop moving, we start to take damage, but we take far too long to catch up to Hope. Managing to finally do so, we slam our blade through her spine as she falls.
You're late. Again, Shay.
Hope. I didn't want to do this.
I trained you to do this. I expected nothing less.
Then why?
To give Liam time to leave. Soon Chevalier will be on his way to the precursor site.
I will stop him.
He will see you coming. Pity. You had so much potential.
Before this point, there might have been some chance of turning back, no matter how slim. It did exist somewhere. But as the woman who we clearly loved lays dying, bleeding in front of us, no matter how one-sided all the bridges in Shay's mind might have been, they have been burnt, reduced to ash. It seems we have been fooled once more. Shay's rather predictable nature has made it so that former allies can slip out into the world to continue on their task. Landing in Percé, we find Captain James Cook while resupplying our vessel. We've been looking for
Tis Capitaine Louis-Joseph Gauthier, Chevalier de la Vérendrye.
Captain Joseph. According to James Cook, he recently set sail for Anticosti an island in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. We now have our heading, with Cook offering assistance should we find ourselves near Conception Bay. All in all, not that far from where we would end up. Casting off, we do our best to rationalize what we did back in New York. After all, we gave it a chance at an imitation of order, while Kenway continues his attempt of controlling the beast that is the Big Apple. Sailing around the back of the fort, a fort we've been to a great many times, we quickly scale the walls of the fort and slip in through the back. As we do, we overhear that Captain Joseph has already left, and a man is doing the hemp tango for treason. The whole fort is rather jumpy because of it. Killing the gang's leader and grabbing the map, we sprint back to the Morgan, hearing mortars opening fire somewhere. Clearly, our ship has been found. A quick plunge into the freezing brine, we make our way on board before setting sail, trying to slip into anonymity as the Royal Navy arrives, letting them clean up the gang in the fort, as we have larger things to deal with. Our course is set for Conception Bay, to rendezvous with Captain Cook. Pulling up alongside, we get a head start getting the code deciphered, but it seems that it's gonna have to take a while if he's gonna write it down. And at this moment, we make a choice to let James Cook join us and bring the Morgan straight to our dear old friend. The feeling and history between us and Joseph is apparent to all. Entering the fog, sounds of cannon fire and icebergs calving give way before a brilliant orange of cannon fire illuminates the fog with the forms of a small convoy of ships blocking our way. Having not upgraded the Morgan since we last were prompted to, this fight is fairly difficult. Not quite on the level of the Storm Fortress, but it took a few tries. This forces us to make full use of our kit and a little bit of burning oil cheese. The high waves are our friends here. Occasionally they can block shots for us, letting arc our own over as burnt powder replaces the fog, reducing visibility to damn near null at some points. But in the end, the convoy goes down to the locker below, with very little health to spare, and the Morgan almost joining them below. With the storm raging on around us, we hear the telltale sign and flash of mortar fire, as our dear captain has clearly found us, and given orders from above, a trap has been set to dam us to the locker below. Sailing blindly into the maze of icebergs, we eventually find the ship, and as for some reason right now, my HUD decides to disappear, resulting in a rather nice-looking fight. Our kit is once more in full play, eventually managing to whittle down the man of war just enough that we can board uninterrupted. And as we do so, we fly up the mast, running across the rigging, before we drop down from above, as Shay seems to prefer, our blade pinning the Frenchman to the deck.
So you think...
So, Cabbage Farmer, are you still convinced the Templars are right?
Convinced to the end.
Oh.
You bastard! Achilles and Liam have already headed north!
Hope was right. I do make a good distraction.
Even in his dying breaths, Captain Joseph seems to have the spat continuing. Back and forth it goes, And at this point, the death of hope has steeled our nerves, and our convictions are ironclad. But it also doesn't help that it is Captain Joseph questioning them. With how horrid our relationship is with him, I wouldn't be shocked if Shay is simply disagreeing with him out of the principle of it. He could inform us that the sky is in fact blue, and we would argue damn near everything else. Interestingly enough, as far as I'm aware, Captain Joseph is the only assassin we kill to have a Wikipedia page on him. While rather short and not being completely clear, he does appear to be a rather remarkable man, even supposedly moving inland and exploring the Rocky Mountains in Wyoming, though it is uncertain if it was him or another one of his brothers who made this massive trek. While personally involved in the events of the French-Indian War, he died returning to France off the coast of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, when his ship, the Auguste, sank while transporting exiles and prisoners of war, him included, to France. Only 7 of the 121 passengers and crew made it ashore from that vessel alive. We show him the same amount of respect he would have shown us, as we toss him overboard into the North Atlantic. Thanking Cook, as we say our goodbyes, he almost cracks the nut on the head as to what we are, before wandering off in a completely different direction. In 18 years, Captain James Cook would be killed on Kealakekua Bay in modern-day Hawaii during a dispute with the locals while taking the chief hostage.
You should have these maps. De la Vedendrye won't need them anymore. We'll contact you in regards to sponsoring future voyages, Captain.
Much obliged.
Pulling alongside Kenway, he ends up boarding us with his usual bored and annoyed self radiating outwards. Casting off, we find ourselves far into the Arctic Circle, towards the precursor site, hoping that it has not been found nor disturbed. The Grandmaster is joining us this time around.
Do you think Achilles and Liam have found the precursor site?
The world is still standing. If they uncovered it, they have not yet set the Earth in motion.
How gentlemanly of them.
There should still be time. Master Gist, stay here. I shall accompany Shay.
Sir, with respect, are you sure that's wise?
As Grand Master, I must investigate this precursor matter to the end, and witness the death of Achilles' brotherhood.
Making our way through the deep snow and ice, we find ourselves above the Assassin Expedition's camp, currently huddled on the sheet ice around fires, doing its best to stay warm. As we enter the caverns, we take out what guards we can, quickly as some ice shifts and cuts us off from Hatham, leaving him to find his own way through. Slipping through the wind-swept tunnels, the glass is ice, and the ice is glassy. And as we continue on, we slowly start to see structures made of smooth carved stone, the same design as all other precursor sites, slowly becoming more and more common in the halls, as we eventually see it, light illuminating in a geometric pattern from the stone itself. Entering a larger hall, it seems Kenway has beat us there and found a path to the same area. Quickly testing the effects of these magical lights on human form, we find the results to be spontaneous and complete ignition. Making our way through the ruins quickly, avoiding all light, we come to the entrance of the main chamber. Reaching the inner heart, and it seems, unfortunately, Liam and Achilles have beat us there as we slip into a cutscene.
Is this the apple?
No, don't touch anything. Shay was right.
What would he know?
More than me, apparently.
Finally, you understand. Achilles. This is a structure to hold the world together, not a weapon to control it. This whole calamity could have been avoided if you'd only listened to me.
Disrespectful to the end.
Yes, we've been working on that. Right or wrong, Shay. You betrayed the Brotherhood, Achilles, and me.
Says the man who shot me in the back.
At the homestead. That was Chevalier. I don't miss.
Liam, don't.
A day late and a dollar short, Achilles finally connects the dots as everyone scrambles away from the collapsing room. As the little scuffle caused the artifact to get thrown off and the chamber starts collapsing, Grandmasters bolt up one flight of stairs as Shay and Liam go up the other. Chasing him down, our final objective is the first one we ever got. Kill the assassin. With all the ice shifting, this is undoubtedly a set-piece moment. Same as Lisbon, dodging falling ice, Liam's shots ring out as he tries to finish us off. Anguished yelling between former best friends, seeing each other off for the first time in years, as we have no choice but to kill the man who brought Shay into the Brotherhood. The man who helped Shay out of his depression left by his parents' death. The closest friend and his only staunch defender amongst the Assassin Brotherhood. And as we do this, one more shot ringing out through the Arctic air, we do Shay's signature move, leaping down to try and spear Liam with our blades, the ice breaking from under us. And in a moment, we use Liam to break our fall, causing him to get crushed underneath us and take the brunt of the fall as he lies there, dying.
I was lucky.
How many times do I have to tell you, Liam? I make my own luck.
How'd you do that, you bastard? You broke the assassins. Betrayed everyone you knew. You sided with our worst enemies. And for what?
To save the world.
I hope that world is a good one.
Shay's soul broken and burnt a little bit more. We head to the sheet ice in front of the Morrigan, finding the two Grandmasters duking it out. Ever the better, Kenway has Achilles at his mercy and on the ropes. And right as the Brotherhood could come to an end, Shay intervenes.
Why not?
Achilles is harmless now. A mentor with no followers. What kind of world are we making if we cannot show mercy? Besides, he understands what these precursor sites are now. Without him, the assassins may continue their search.
Valid points.
Plague let Achilles live. The mission ends, and a single shot is fired.
Never forget what has happened here.
I won't. But the world will.
And next, we have a new mission. This life is set for us. Is it penance for letting Achilles live? Is it just business? It's hard to tell. Kenway, ever the mastermind, probably has it as a bit of both. 20 years in the future, we enter the Palace of Versailles, a bridge being formed between two generations of consuls. A young boy is being brought into the palace, joining his father on some business. Behind him, a man scrambles up through a window, stalking his way through the crowds with practice ease like a predator moving through the forest. Moving through rooms full of guards as if it were nothing, barely even a blip on their radar. Dropping into a separate courtyard, a guard falls, dead, as two children hide, laughing, talking about a theft committed. The theft of an apple. Moving through the hallway, Shay finds his target. Charles Dorian. We follow him through the crowd, and then we strike. And as the blood pools on the floor, an old debt fades. A debt paid to a dead man, as a new game starts at this point, on stronger, maybe better hardware. A buggy mess, and a game well remembered. And as this story ends, it ends the same way as it begins. An oath recited, our convictions held strong, though different from our comrades, as our credits roll.
Uphold the principles of our order, and all that for which we stand. Never share our secrets, nor divulge the true nature of our work. Do so until death, whatever the cost. This is my new creed. I am Shay Patrick Cormac, Templar of the Colonial, of the American right. I am an older man now, and perhaps wiser. A war and a revolution have ended, and another is about to begin. May the Father of Understanding guide us all.
What Achilles said in those frozen wastes holds true, I feel. While Rogue has gained a cult following, and retrospectives by the pillars of the video essay community either sing its praises or tear it to shreds as not deserving that aforementioned praise. But beyond those who spend their time staring at the past, looking for something maybe even they don't know what they're looking for, the world has largely forgotten this game. I find it mentioned in the same breath as Assassin's Creed Liberations and Freedom Cry. When discussed with friends, it's clear why the game is overlooked. While it is set in a wonderful time period to tell such a story, as shown by my little excerpts on the historically relevant moments, and I loved looking into these moments, reading through Wikipedia articles, and going into rabbit holes that even I didn't think of. It's clear why. People say it's lacking in many ways, and it's true. The story, while I enjoy it and is good on paper, falls flat in execution because the reason that Shay switched sides is clear as day. The Colonial Brotherhood was so ass backwards, corrupt, and in violation of what the Creed stood for, being comically evil at times, such as their plot to turn the city of New York into a gas-filled mass grave. Most anyone who lacked such blind loyalty to the Creed would turn on them. We are more in line with the Creed than anyone else. An assassin wearing a Templar skin, killing assassins who act like Templars. And within this, it certainly does not help that Rogue was meant for the Xbox 360 era of consoles, while Unity was this brand shiny new thing releasing on Xbox One using the Anvil Next 2.0 engine that, like I said, would be used all the way up until Odyssey before they switched to the Ubisoft Anvil engine for Valhalla. Unity's infamous launch also did not help shedding any light on this game, as even if it was all bad press, the press was focused on this buggy, unplayable mess of a game, rather than this underdeveloped, brilliant attempt at a game. And while mostly playable now, Unity still has that cross to bear, with the community slowly coming around to it. People saying the parkour is the best looking of the series, and the game is getting a second life because of that. And while Rogue lacks a lot of these massive game-breaking issues, it gets none of that. It is forgotten, just as Achilles said, in the cold, vast Arctic. And I do feel there's more of a story to tell here, both with our numbskull joining the Templars at the end, as well as for Shay. Maybe not as the protagonist of the game, but as an antagonist and an older man using his own interpretation of the Templar Oath to make the world a better place while being pursued by Connor, or Arno, or maybe both. And it's truly unfortunate, because I fully see why others in this uber-massive video essay space that I have foolishly decided to dip my toes into would rag on a game such as this. But there is so much to enjoy here as well. While not an excuse, the game was made in 8 months, and it shows. We were reportedly supposed to go back to Lisbon as a Templar, which would have been amazing to see us going through an old-fashioned city setting, running about, exploring, maybe even dealing with the consequences of our actions as an assassin. I've seen Rogue be called Black Flag Canada Edition, or the White Edition, which I don't fully disagree with. The changes that are there aren't all that major, and the ones that are changed are such little things of which your opinion will vary wildly on. But even through all these issues, I can't help but love the game. It might be because what I call the Kenway Saga, or the games made in the Anvil Next 2.0 engine, is around the time I became aware of this game series as a whole. I love the color filter used in the earlier games, giving it a unique look, letting these games stand out from the crowd. There's only so much you can push photorealism. And while I ragged on the visuals of Assassin's Creed 3 in my Dishonored video, I still enjoy the way that 3 looks. While not having the complete freedom of the Ezio trilogy or the first game, I feel this parkour system strikes a wonderful balance of control versus freedom, rather fittingly displayed in a game of this subject material. So while the flaws are clear and some of the victories small, I have completely enjoyed my trip back through this game. The white snow of the isolated North Atlantic and the verdant greens of the river valley contrasting beautifully. Few moments feel as wonderful to me, so serene, as sailing the Morgan in the North Atlantic, watching the northern lights dance across the sky. The snowy expanse is where I feel most at home. Winter backpacking and hikes in the mountains during winter being a personal pastime of mine, with skiing and teaching others to love this environment all the same as me being something that I do for work on my off days. It's only natural for me to love such a game as this, I feel, as even though I have grown out of it slightly, there's still as that edgy teenager in me, that 13-year-old who loves the idea of what if the bad guys were good guys, and what if the good guys were bad. So while this prattling has gone on for far too long, I turn the question over to you. What do you think of this game? Is it underrated or underplayed? Has it garnered more praise than it deserves, and I've been talking about nothing for far, far too long? Or is there something hidden in this scene of ice, snow, and betrayal? With that, please do let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, I'm Sven, and this is Elven Prince, signing out.